Good morning, United Kingdom. Good morning, and good morning to the drive time session with Lakhi Singh, the business and property fixer, and the alternative business and property solutions community. Good morning, Lakhi Singh, and what's the weather like there in United Kingdom? Southeast London, square mile.
We've got a blue sky, so it's looking
Yes,
beautiful.
sir. No, you're not wanting. You don't want to tell us. Okay.
You can't hear me. Can you hear me? Okay.
As always.
Let me try and dial back.
We can hear you now. We can hear you now. Yeah, we can hear you. We heard you before. Okay, Lakhi Singh is gone. Good morning, Lakhi Singh. Are you back?
Good morning. Is that any better? I could hear you, but you couldn't hear me.
Excelente, sir. Excelente. No, we could hear you. I think you probably fixed the mic, but we can hear you now, loud and clear. So what's the weather like there in the big square mile of London, southeast?
The most beautiful day we've had in a while. So it's a blue sky with the sun is out.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me okay?
Can just about, yeah, I can hear you now. Blue sky and what?
And the sun is out.
Blue sky and the sun is out. Excelente. Right.
I think you're quite close to the screen. You might want to move back a bit.
What?
You're quite close to the screen. I think you might want to move back a bit.
Yeah. I might want to move back. Yeah. Am I intimidating you?
Yes, very scary.
My closeness to the screen. Am I intimidating you, Lakhi Singh?
It's very, very scary.
Am I sort of intimidating you with my proximity to the screen? Right. Anyhow, yes. Very, very scary. Okay, I like to be scary. Right, okay. Right, the topic then, sir. Will Joe Biden affect the property market in the United States? That's what it's designed to do, to scare you, to scare my guests. Yes. So, will Joe Biden affect the UK property market? That's one question we have for today. And the saying of the weekend, it's not the falling that is important. Is the rising after you fall that's important? Is that right? That's right. Our greatest glory, just like the glory, the glory is in rising after the fall. That's really what we want to say. We've got the famous Mr. Ninda Singh Johal in the back stage. Can we have you on, sir? Bring some color before we start watching the paint dry. Ninda, sir, how are you doing, sir?
I'm pretty good. Can you hear me?
Excelente, right. So, What's the weather like there in, I think you're in Birmingham. Yes, is that right?
That's right. Well, normally when we speak,
Or are you in Wolverhampton?
yeah,
You're
Birmingham.
Birmingham, right? Okay. What's the weather like there, sir?
Normally when we speak on a Friday, it's drizzling and raining. Today it's bright but icy.
Today, but today,
bright and icy. Can you hear me?
bright and icy.
Yeah.
That's a good combination. So it's like a crisp morning, is it, in Birmingham? Yes?
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we go across to Lakhi Singh then. Lakhi Singh says it's a sunny, bright day. Excellent day. So there's a change in the weather. So one of the questions for today is Joe Biden, basically, not just the property market. I think the election of Joe Biden, is it going to affect the market in general? Are we going to get affected by the fact that we've got a different president in? Is it going to be for the better? Is it going to be for the worse? Is there going to be an effect on the UK market? That's one question. And obviously, the more philosophical question for the weekend is the glory isn't in falling, but in rising after the fall. That's where the glory is at. So, Ninda sir, please give us your take on the glory of falling and rising, because I know you have had lots of trials and tribulations. So did you find more glory in the rising after the fall, or did you find more glory in just the rise and the fall wasn't that glorious?
I think this week, if you're a bit of a cricketing fan, that will have really applied. So we had India, who got skittled out in the first test in Australia for 35, then came roaring back to win the series for the first time at the place called the Gabba. So there was an example of someone right on the floor. And I think Tendulkar said something really good. Tendulkar being the cricket legend from India. He said, we all have our 35s, in other words, being skittled out for 35. But it's how we rise from that 35 that determines our character. And I think this week, if you're a cricketing fan, you'll have seen a side that was decimated at the end of the first test rise to take the series. So I think it's a perfect question to ask in a great week for Indian cricket.
So in 35 years, I think, or 33 years,
Right.
England has won the Ashes back from Australia. Is that right?
No. So what you're referring to there is that in 1988 was the last time Australia lost in this particular ground called the Gabba.
The Ashes. Okay.
That was the last time they'd ever been beaten at that ground. India came and beat them. And of course, the interesting thing, what you raise that question is, what's the psychology now in the beaten side, Australia? How will they now psychologically feel where they are now? Will they rise and compete, or psychologically have they been broken? And that will be interesting for the next opponent, which is going to be England, is how they react to England. So,
well, no harm there. England, I'm sure, will not disappoint them and allow them to rise again. But is that the glorious bit, though? That's the question. Is there glory in the fall to rise, or is there just glory in rising all the time, being number one, being top of the charts all the time? Is that the glorious bit? Is
okay,
there any honor in falling?
there's a couple of things. I think when you've fallen, provided you learn from why you've fallen, that can set you up for the future. I think being surrounded by people better than you, and I'm talking about competition as well as friends, makes you better then, both as an individual and as an organization. And of course, it depends how you define the word fallen. Is that fallen for an hour? Is it fallen for a day? Is it fallen for a decade? It all depends. And of course, people learn differently from when they fall from other people. So it depends on the individual and the nature of the fall, as well as the length of the fall.
Okay, I'm gonna stay with you, Linda, because I know cricket is one of your favorite sports. So, with a game like cricket that's cyclic, isn't it a bit weird why we keep having the rises and the falls? Surely, are we not learning all the time? It's the same bat, the same ball. The strategy can't be any new. You can't bring in a couple of, attack helicopters on the pitch. That's going to be the change in the game plan. I mean, it's the same set of circumstances, weather, pitch, climate, the what's it now, the particular players, the type of attack bowlers you have, and spinners and mid cricket, so what's it now, your midliners and stuff. Why is it that you need to have a rise and a fall, and why is it that this happens in cricket when the parameters, when the key fundamentals are the same? It's not like warfare, is it? It's not like you've got new weapons. It's not like you've got a new electronic ball that's come out and it sort of like moves itself around the wicket and has catches you out if you're not careful. Well, why is it that we have to keep continually learning those things which have already been learned over the last about 100 years of cricket?
I think anything that involves human beings brings uncertainty. So if you're playing any game, any sport, the likelihood is that your team might have changed because of injury, might have changed because someone's not performing as well. Likewise, it'll happen to the opposition. Their team may not be the same. There are things out of your control, just like business. So out of our control in business is the economy. In our control are the people that work for us. In a team, what's in control is your people in your team. But externally, what's out of your control is the weather. What's out of your control is what we call the pitch, on how the pitch has been prepared. And what's also out of control to a certain extent is the form of your players and whether they're performing right. And obviously, as the game progresses, the situation can change during a game. Just like if you're launching a new product, you think you're going to hit the deadline, but something goes wrong. I mean, the classic example was the vaccine. We weren't sure how the vaccine was coming together. So there are things that change. The journey does change. In life, you find very few things that are consistent and predictable, because if they were, then would all be the same, would all act the same. And unfortunately, life isn't. So I think it's very rare to find a situation where you can predict the outcome pretty accurately. And if I could, I would certainly put some money on the lottery tickets tomorrow.
Right. With that, I'm going to come across to Lakhi Singh and I'm going to say, well, you've got the same fundamentals in business. The question is, we've got a new president, Joe Biden. Do we expect it to affect the UK market as a whole and then the property market in the United Kingdom? How do you answer that question?
Well, there's an old saying, I think when we had Linda on in the first couple of shows, we said when America sneezes, it's usually England would normally catch a cold. So I think the situation is worse now, which is that literally America sneezes, we've got COVID-19. So things are probably not as straight-laced as that problem even, because the whole global economy is in a bit of disarray. So I can't see things getting any better with the global pandemic. And if I think America literally has a nosebleed, you're going to have a bloodbath, I think, is this type of situation financially.
Right, okay. That makes sense somewhere. Right. So the next question for you, Lakhi Singh, which is what Ninda's already answered. The rise and the fall. Is there glory in falling to rise, or do you say there's glory only in rising? You've had your falls and your rises, and I'm not talking about that type of a rise. I'm talking about business rise. What do you say in that? I mean, do you say that statement's true, that there's a glory in the fall and the rise after the fall, or is there glory in rising only? And can you be like Donald Trump, can't accept loss, loser mentality? What do you say, sir?
Well, I think I've got more of a philosophical. I think. Do you hear me okay?
Say, can you hear me, Lakhi Singh? Okay, we've got a problem with Lakhi Singh.
Can you hear me okay? I can hear you
Far
fine.
back, we can't hear him. We'll put the question across to Ninda Singh, sir. In terms of Joe Biden's election, what's your take on the fact that is he going to make a difference to the UK economy immediately, or do you think it's going to be a slow trickle down after he fixes, his own immediate problems in the country and a lot of the problems that have been left by the famous Mr. Trump?
I think it's interesting that today the stock markets around the world have gone up. Southeast Asia.
So we can't hear Ninda either.
Oh.
Have connection.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes, you can. No, you can't. You can hear me.
Linda, can you hear me?
Yes.
So he says he can hear you. So you may as well continue with the answer.
Okay. So this morning the Far East stock markets.
You're breaking up. You're broken up. I think you're breaking up. Linda, can you hear us?
We can. Yes. I can hear Linda.
As usual, we have.
You probably hear him fine
as well.
We
can. Houston, we have liftoff. We have connection. Houston, can you hear us?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh.
Yep.
We can both hear you.
We can both hear you. Can you hear us? Oh, he's gone.
I thought I'd wear my pheasant tie today. So I'm going to go hunting afterwards in the forest.
Are you going hunting? Seriously? I was going to say.
Go. I'm going to go pigeon shooting in Surrey in the lockdown. Definitely not.
No, it's.
This is one of my oldest ties from about 30 years ago when I used to work for Gibbs and Hawkes in Savile Row.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Thought I'd wear that just to sort of remind me of the old days. Sort of matches with the tie as well, the colour, the orange.
Yeah. So are we going to get Mr. VJ back? Have we lost him?
He's going to probably try and come back again in a minute. But I think because of bad connection, I think we'll continue. So if you...
we're back.
There you go. Here he comes.
We're back now.
We're back. Right. Okay, Lakhi Singh.
We're just going to last time the chit chat, but now you're back. We've got to get back on the show, do we?
Get back into the mood, yes. Right, Lakhi Singh. Your philosophical answer.
Just give me the question again, because I've lost track now.
Right. The question is, Ninda's, talked about, classic examples. Given the example of cricket and said, look, there's a rise and fall, and there's lots of variations that keep us always guessing the outcome of something. Because my question is, look, cricket is a fairly, tried and tested sport. We know all the critical things: the ball, the pitch, the weather, the team. All of that we know, and yet, why is it we have this we don't have an ever rising team. It's always winning. Why is there a fall and a rise? And this is what Ninda said. It's now up to the Australian team to reflect. That's really what Ninda says. He says, look, it's about reflection after the fall. It's not just about the fall. It's about looking back and seeing what you did and did not do right, and fixing yourself and dusting yourself off and getting ready for the next match. Now, I'm asking you in a business terminology, you've been through lots of hardships yourself. And was there glory in the fall? Did you enjoy falling, losing all those millions to rise up again like a phoenix, like a 6 foot long, 6'4" long phoenix with a turban on? Was that more of the glory? What do you say? Where is it in the business world? Isn't the
Well,
business world about always being up there, and they don't appreciate failure, I think, in the business world, or do they?
definitely not. I think, it didn't feel glorious at the time anyway. It just felt like a kick in the where when you're going through all these. But when you look back, I think when you reflect and you think, okay, well, had I, I've made X amount of money, but had I not had that experience, I wouldn't be able to actually make more money now, or make better of myself, because sometimes you got to go through your journey to be able to appreciate how you can then navigate more difficult waters. So if you haven't been through, let's say, somewhat difficult waters, when the really difficult waters comes and the tsunami comes, how are you going to cope? You're not going to be able to handle it, withstand it. So I think glory comes from every event in your life, really, if you look at it from a business and a bit more philosophical point of view. So I think at the time, definitely didn't feel like glory. But now I would say every twist and turn and up and down, ducking and diving, whichever way you want to call it, is glorious.
Glorious, right, sir? Ninda Singh, sir, I'm going to ask you. You've gone through your own trials and tribulations in your business world. Was there glory in the failures, the fallings? Was there glory in it, or was there only glory in being number one? Number one in the charts always. Was it possible? Were you always going to expect to be number one?
I think when you make a mistake, which normally leads to a fall, and if you can analyze where that mistake lay, and it could be you didn't have the skill set required going forward, that's when you then recruit and bring someone in to help you to make sure. So example, if one falls because you weren't looking after the numbers, then you bring someone in who's sharp on numbers and keeps you informed. If, on the other hand, you weren't as good as you were in your branding and your marketing, in other words, you didn't get your message out, then you bring someone in who can help you with that. But I tell you what's also very interesting is if you make mistakes, then you can pass on your advice to other people to explain to them how they can avoid making mistakes. So it's good to read books about entrepreneurs who have succeeded, but it's just as good to read about books from entrepreneurs who failed, because you can then learn from their mistakes and avoid having making them yourself. So I'm reading a book on two totally separate books. So I read a book about Sam Walton, Walmart, and I just finished a book on Amazon. Both trajectories going up, both explain where they made failures. But I'm now reading about a brand that did fail, which is Yahoo. And it's interesting understanding why Yahoo failed. So I think life is never predictable, and we certainly know that with the pandemic. You're going to make mistakes, but that's good, because if you innovate, you will make mistakes. So expect to make mistakes because from mistakes will come your learning. But if you want to avoid a mistake, then probably you won't take risks, you won't innovate, and you'll stagnate anyway.
Okay, let's take that as a snippet of a thought. Learning from your mistakes. Can you see Donald Trump learning from his mistakes, Lakhi Singh? Do you think he is too stubborn to employ someone who's good at the numbers if he's bad at the numbers, or to employ at least learn from his mistakes and take stock of what he did, why he lost? Because he's probably just focusing on the fact he had 74 million votes, but a lot of that vote was based upon spinning and lies. The reality of it is that 74 million have lost favor with him. I don't think he has that following anymore. So what do you say, Lakhi Singh? Donald Trump, is he going to take stock of mistakes he made? And do you think he's going to come back stronger, an influencer, somebody who's going to help in drafting foreign policy and commercial relationships for the United States of America? And before you answer that question, because I know you're going to have problems with your mic, shout out to Mr. Malhotra, John Smith, Mina, and who else? Mandy. That's right, we've got Mandy. Big shout out. Yes, Lakhi Singh.
I think, to be honest with you, difficult to say, because somebody's been through that type of journey. There's a possibility you've got to be positive. So I think there is a possibility he might learn from his mistakes. I don't know. Only he knows. But I certainly think he has got quite a odd psychology from some of the TV programs I watched about him, whether they were negatively, put up against him to try and influence elections or influence public opinion is a different matter. But I think certainly he's he likes to actually be up against it. He's not afraid of confrontation. He loved it. I loved it when his whole team were arguing about things, because he has that sort of psychology. So, and I think, whatever anybody does, there's always some sort of good that does come out of it. So I just want to be positive. I just think that there's a possibility that he has some sort of golden goose somewhere, and he's going to bring it out. But I don't know what that is, because he may look outward to try and try to learn from his lessons. So let's hope, because everybody's got the ability to maybe rethink things, and maybe if he works on himself, his spiritual being, or his very maybe outdated views and let's say different cultures and diversity, then you never know. I think let's be positive about him.
Okay, I mean, isn't there a bit of a isn't it a bit obvious that he did it for the purpose of creating divisiveness and cutting out a portion of society that probably were of a narrow thought pattern? So it goes back to what Linda said, learning from your mistakes and taking stock of what you did wrong is important. But like you said, he may still go forward without learning from his mistakes, and he may attempt to be an influencer in the immediate future. Time will only tell. So the topic still remains unanswered. Joe Biden, Linda Singh, do you think his election is going to affect the UK economy and the property market as a whole?
As we were saying before, we've lost each other. This morning, the Asian stock markets opened, and they opened positively after yesterday's inauguration. The US stock markets have been their most buoyant after inauguration since 1937.
Woo! Long while ago.
Yeah, so That's how the markets have seen it. There was a lot of uncertainty around China and US, and it'll be interesting how Biden responds to that. Trump was definitely anti-EU. It'll be interesting how Biden now sort of changes that. We know that the US is heavy on environmental damage, but Biden's now signed to the environmental sort of treaty with the rest of the world. We also know that Biden's going to throw money. He's going to throw a lot of money at the economy. So hopefully, if their stock markets continue to go up and their economy recovers, a bit like Lakhi Singh said, if their markets continue to recover, then there will be a spill out to the rest of the world. What does that mean in terms of inflation? What does it mean in terms of property prices? What does it mean in terms of interest rates? The states are saying they're not going to raise their interest rates for a while, and the fact that they're throwing money at the economy means the dollar will stay low. If the dollar stays low, then interest rates, it'll be interesting what they do with interest, because normally if the dollar's high, you normally bring interest rates down. So it'll be interesting. But if they can keep their economy soaring, because remember the latest projection about a couple of weeks ago was that China would become the biggest economy within 5 years, will overtake the US. So we might be having a different conversation in 5 years' time. But if the US economy grows, if they continue to get the vaccine out, we continue to get the vaccine out here. It's interesting that Glastonbury cancelled their festival yesterday, but the Japanese haven't said yay or no to the Olympics. So there's a lot of things going on at the moment. And
there's a big flux, isn't there? There's a lot of uncertainty. There's no consistent response to what's happening, is there? That's really what you're saying. Lakhi Singh, how is it affecting you in the business world? Are you getting a consistent approach to business, or are you finding each lender bank to their own? Are you finding private investors have got a different appetite as well? Are some private investors holding on to their pennies, or are some of them out there to make a killing by mopping up a complete market that's been unsatisfied for the last year? What's happening?
What's happening is I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday. We've got anybody who's let's just say a ultra high net type investor, a hedge fund or a family office, or they've got an access of 20-30 million pounds of funding, or they've got very strong personal guarantees, and they've got 100 years of experience as a organization in a particular sector. I think anybody with big money is going to get maybe get 10 times bigger, because they've got the credibility to actually attract more money. So the very big fish, the big funds are actually investing into those sort of people. So anybody who's a small organization, smaller funds, possibly below, let's say 2 to 5 million type organization or business, or let's just say even less than 10 million, those people, they are really being ostracized somewhat in terms of their credibility to the larger fish, or the people that got the money, is probably not there as much as it was maybe 2 to 3 years ago. So the whole market is shifting to more sort of larger corporate structures, and they are the ones that are actually now working between themselves to become even bigger. So I think there's going to be a huge shift to lots of smaller organizations actually, and acquisitions, where they're all joining together to actually create more credibility, attract more funds. So
okay, so you're saying the environment's going to be more of an M&A environment, so big fish start consuming the small fish, and they start merging and consolidating. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be acquisitions, but also joint ventures. I think what we're going to find is that the smaller businesses, in order to compete or even to stay alive, to survive, I'd say even, they're going to have to join forces with other organizations. So I think collaboration in business is going to be key now for survival. Without that, I think we're going to see a lot of businesses literally going under overnight.
Okay. So, Ninda, sir, can we see you consuming all those little event fishes around you? Are you going to lap up all the small players in the market and become a big event management and publishing company?
I think a lot of this, what happens March onwards, will depend on if we have a budget. And why I mean the budget is important is whether the Chancellor is going to offer more money to keep companies alive. Because we know till March the furlough's in. We know they're deferred VAT. They know they're deferring quite a few things. I think March will tell us a lot. It'll tell us whether the property bubble will continue or collapse. It'll tell us whether we are going to hit a double dip recession and how severe it's going to be. We will find out how much they're going to support the UK economy. I think March is going to be really important because you're getting to the head of what the government thinks the next 12 months are going to look like. Because they've been incredibly quiet, if you understand what I'm saying. They've been talking about the vaccine a lot, but they haven't said much about the economy. Now, we do know last week GDP was down by 2.3%. And we also know that the latest research shows that 49% of those people who rent in London are not going back. That's a big number. 49% of renters. So, will the high street change? Will the rental market change? That confidence will depend on what the government says in March in their budget. That's if we do have a budget. So I think March is your crucial month. We'll start to get a sense of where we are with the vaccine. We'll start to get a sense of people's confidence. This is consumer confidence and business confidence. And March, we'll get an idea where the government sits in terms of what their view is of the economy going forward. I think March is going to be crucial.
Okay, Lakhi Singh, do you believe that? Do you believe March is important? Do you see that the government normally tries to deflect the bad news it has to give the public by creating some event or some calamity or something goes wrong? Somebody's fallen off the Eiffel Tower and that becomes a focus of Europe. What do you think the government's going to take ownership and make a decision that's going to influence where the economy is going, and they want that decision to be directly related to what happens? Or do you think something else may happen that will be a distraction rather from the obvious?
To be honest, I don't know.
Sigh of relief.
I don't know what the government will do because, but I know for sure that March is pivotal. And I've been saying the same actually to quite a lot of business people that I've been having discussions with. So the main thing is that we are. I sent an article to you, VJSL, earlier about there's a BBC interview, and somebody was actually saying on the BBC interview that too critical said, and I think this is touching upon a couple of other areas which are a bit sensitive. But he actually said that out of all the deaths that have occurred for COVID-19 so far, only 398 deaths were people below the age of 65. Now, that is a shocking statistic. So, question is, why is it that whatever we're doing is very much focused in on the whole population in lockdown? Why not is it focused in on the people that are the most vulnerable and actually looking after them and helping them to actually administer more of a lockdown situation, but with the additional benefits to support them? So that's
Oh,
one
that's
fundamental.
interesting. I was going to listen to some news this morning, but obviously ran out of time. Something about a care home in Europe somewhere. Am I correct in hearing what I did hear? Can you confirm that, sir? Or
Yeah, I think the other one was around a couple of days ago is a vaccine that the vaccine that's been given. There's no real hard facts and stats around the scale up stats on this, but I think of a certain percentage of people that were given the vaccine, 5 actually passed away because or had issues because they had severe impact on it because they were already had severe issues or chronic issues with their health. So one of the things that potentially has come out is that anybody that's got quite elderly and they've got some sort of chronic illness, the likelihood of to take the vaccine is that they're not really going to survive the vaccine. So
okay,
that's another thing that's not necessarily publicized, but it did actually come out from in the news, not on the main BBC news.
okay, right, okay. Ninda Singh. With that, which is a bit damning, bit worrying. What do you think? Your prediction on 21, has it changed or is it the same? Is it going to be a good 21 and 22 is going to be great? Or is it a bit different now? Is it uncertain now what 21 is going to be?
I think, look, a lot of people with confidence of what do people think. We do have an uncertainties that we're working on a vaccine that we're not 100% sure about, but we're pretty good about it. I think back to Lucky's point about we've always known that the people most prone to this were people either with underlying issues or people that were elderly. We've always known that. I think the main driver has always been that can the NHS cope? And what they were trying to do was limit the spread. I think they were doing okay until the new variant came out. And the trouble with the variant was,
So the new variant is the real damage.
yeah. And what the real variant did was it accelerated contagion. Like it isn't more lethal than the other one. It's the same, it's not any more lethal, but it speeds quicker. People catch it quicker. Now, what's also been good, if you look at the stats, is the number of people infected is going down now. It is going down. The number of deaths is going up because there's a lag factor. So in other words, when people have got it, there's always a lag. I think there'll be 2 dates. I think mid-Feb, which is what the government said they'll know where they are by then. Remember, there are more people now with vaccinations than there are with COVID. So the two are crossing, if that makes sense. So we'll see where we are mid-Feb, because that's what the government mentioned. I've always said, we'll mention where we are end of March. Because from my events perspective, I can launch an event in the Midlands and have it concluded in 3 months. I only need 3 months. But people like Glastonbury and Tokyo Olympics, they got a much longer lead time. Now, my London event has got a much longer lead time. How do I think it's going to pan? I think it's too early, VJ. It's far too early. I still think February will be the first time we pause to have a look. End of March, we'll sit back and say, okay, we've got a good idea where we're going. And I think end of March.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to be looking at it's going to be mid-Feb, March. That's the 2 critical times. Lakhi Singh, last few words from you, sir. We're already over time, but obviously you are the fixer, you are the mover, the groover, the hoover. J. Edgar Hoover, maybe. Please tell us your last words of wisdom before we close off today.
I think there's a huge frenzy with a lot of people now really, really worried about COVID-19. And so my message is more around mental health. There's not much we can do sitting here in our houses to help people. So I think the word is mental health. I think I've had more calls of people suffering now at a very extreme level in the last 2-3 days. And I think as a community, we owe it to maybe support them. Maybe we should talk about mental health as a topic, really. So my worry is all those people that are locked down now, which is almost, and they're not all elderly or vulnerable, that are suffering the consequences of a very standardized approach to everybody. It's not tailored to people with more of the problem that are going to be suffering the consequences. So my heart goes out for those that are now suffering at home, but yet they're probably the least likely to be impacted by ill health. So love to all those that are out there, and just hope you're okay. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Lakhi, for rounding off. Love to everyone. And Lakhi Singh obviously worried for the effects of the lockdown. And Ninder Singh says mid-Feb, we'll know what's happening with the virus, the antidote, and March from the economy. Take care, everyone. Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, and the alternative business and properties community. With Lakhi Singh, property fixer. See you next week, sir.